Salutations and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Vergil's second Eclogue. This is going to be lines 56 through 59. But first, last time in Vergil's Eclogue. Wow, it's going so well. The last one wouldn't cooperate. Well, here's a rubric, everything we're looking for as we go through the text. Let's get started. Rusticus es corridon, nec muna curat Alexis, nec si muneribus certes, concedat iolas. How, quid volui misero mihi, floribus austrum perditus et liquidus inimici fontibus apros. Did I do inimici? Should be inimici. My apologies. Well, here we have a exclamation of sorts at the beginning. Corydon appears to have finally developed some self-awareness of what he's been trying to argue and how silly it is. Rusticus, so you have our US right there for nominative singular masculine. S, second person singular from from, that's Greek, sum esse fui, brain scramble there. And then he's got corydon, which doesn't decline normally. So we're going to have to guess by context what function it is. But since we've got S and rusticus, this is going to be a vocative, where he's referring to himself, saying, you are a rustic, or another way of putting it is, you are a boor, you're a country dweller, therefore undesirable. But before writing that down, I'm going to go through to the end of the sentence so that we get the whole sense of his self-realization. Neck, we've got another neck here, so we can go neither nor, possibly, depending on whether or not it makes sense in English. Munera we saw last at line 44, and in the way that Corydon is using it, it means gifts or presents. With that A right there, it's going to be not nominative. Accusative plural neuter, which I think is what it was last time we saw it as well. Curat, AT right there. Curo, curare, that is a third singular present tense active and indicative, with Alexis, IS right there, nominative singular masculine as our subject. Alexis doesn't care for his gifts. It makes perfect sense. And then we get to the slightly more troubled line. And it's not troubled because it's hard to understand. It's troubled because I couldn't figure out what iolos means. But we'll come to that in a moment. Nec neither, si muneribus certes. We have es right here. And this is actually from the verb curto curtare. It's a first conjugation. So with es, we know that that's going to be a second person singular present tense of the present stem. And that it is an active form, but it is subjunctive with this hypothetical here. Muneribus is going to be, sorry, a brain crashed or something for a moment. We have muneribus as either going to be dative or ablative. Certes means to fight, to struggle. And I suppose Corydon could be saying that Iolos, who we'll get to in a moment, and him are going to be fighting with the gifts, but I don't think that makes much sense, since the gifts are flowers and things like that. Instead, fight with reference to the gifts, in which case it would be the dative of reference. So, dative, plural, neuter. Concedat, our verb with Ios, AT right there. This is a third conjugation verb, so the AT tells us that this is subjunctive, just like certes. Third singular present stem active subjunctive, and then Iolaus. As I said, I couldn't quite figure out what the meaning of Iolaus' name is. About all I could determine is that the yo part of it might come from the Greek word aeon, which means the color violet or the color purple. Or it could come from the, again, Greek word eo. No, that's not where the accent is. Eos, which means either arrow or poison. I don't think violet makes much sense. Iolaus, as I think the green and yellow says, a common name for the villain in writings like the Eclogues. So poison or arrow as the part of the meaning of his name makes a lot of sense. As for the las part, the two L's could duplicate. That often happens in languages, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The word we would probably be looking for is going to be lambda alpha something, or lambda omicron something. The most obvious lambda alpha choice, which could contract into las, doesn't make much sense. That's loas. Yeah. Laos. It's just a Greek word for men or people. So he's poison people. I suppose it could be what his name means, but it's kind of silly. So I don't think so. The other option is from the verb, one of the various verbs spelled lambda alpha omega, which I think can mean to see. So poison sight, which is okay. And then another one is to like seize or grasp, I think. So that would be the grasping poison. But again, I don't know. That's about as definite as I could get. And I can only say one of these two because often in Greek words, either of these nouns shortens as a prefix to other words. So we've got io with the new dropped out, tacked onto various things just to describe the color of the object. And then likewise, io with the sigma dropping out, tacked onto various other things to say that it's poisonous, whatever it is. So he's the villain. What his villainous name means, though, is, I don't know, poison something, arrow something. But now let's write down what all this means before my brain crashes again. So as I was writing it down, I realized part of the reason why my brain crashed earlier with muneribus is that ablative also works since he doesn't necessarily mean like physically struggle, and that's what my brain got hung up on. Instead, it could be fighting for Alexis by giving gifts, so fighting with gifts, rather than fisticuffs or something like that. So, dative or ablative, back to that now. Either one's an option. I suppose there's the possibility that he brings the basket of carefully arranged flowers and berries and things like that, and then Iolaus fights him for it. But that's a bit ridiculous. Let's move on. Heu heu. These are further exclamations which don't elide. Since we've got the H aspiration, the vowels should normally elide so that we don't say them. But with this type of exclamation, you can't really get rid of it. It disappears entirely since it's almost exclusively a vowel. These are exclamations of sorrow, so they mean alas, alas. Just go ahead and write that down. Quid volui misero mihi. Volui is our verb, so this comes from volo, vele, volui. And this is our first person singular, perfect tense, active and indicative. This highly irregular verb, it means to wish, to want. It's going to be taking quid from quis quid, our interrogative word. What have I wished? And then we're going to have misero mihi. Mihi has to be dative singular. And then misero is going to be modifying it as another dative singular. What have I wished for wretched me? So we've got another dative of reference, in this case a dative of disadvantage. He's wished something terrible on himself. A unrequited, or possibly even unrequitable love. I forgot to note also that we don't know who Iolaus is. I think last time that he appeared, though not in name, the guess was from the green and yellow that he might be the master, so owner of both Alexis and Corydon, and he has Alexis as his favorite. But another option is that Iolaus is just another shepherd out there, or a shepherd or some other worker, but he's more handsome, so he's the better rival than Corydon. But moving on, we have this interesting statement, which appears to be some sort of rustic proverb. So it doesn't make too much sense for our setting, but the green and yellow speculates that this is something that they would say and has a meaning that people out in the countryside would understand. And as Luther says, and I'm going to get this wrong, you can't understand Vergil's Georgics and his Ecloga unless you've been a shepherd for like 3 years or 5 years, something like that. I haven't been a shepherd that long, so I lack that understanding. But let's get into it. Floribus, flos, floris is our word right here. So this is going to be a dative or ablative plural. We'll be able to determine that later. This is masculine. Austrum, um right there for an accusative singular masculine from auster. This is the south wind. Perditus, us right there. That's going to be a perfect passive participle nominative singular, masculine. And this is referring, can't refer to the floribus, the wrong case. Can't refer to Austrum, even though Austrum is masculine. So it has to refer back to Corydon, still talking about himself. This means ruined, destroyed, as it looks, perdition. So where do we get from that? Et liquidis, is right there. This is from liquidus, liquida, liquidum. It's an adjective, so we've got another dative or ablative plural here. And then the gender we're going to have to determine by the other dative or ablative plural, fontibus, fons, fontis, and this one is feminine. Which then means liquidus is also feminine. Those two go together. And then we have an interesting verb here, in misi, with in prefix. I don't know if in misi has a entry of its own in the lexica, but it's pretty clear what it meant. Send into, place into is also how we could talk about that. And it wants to take a direct object, which we have when austrum are accusative, and we also have with apros omicron, sigma right, not omicron, os, wrong language, for accusative, plural, masculine from oper, which I think we've seen before in this eclogue. It's a boar, so we've got multiple boars. First person singular, mito, mitere, misi, perfect tense, active, and indicative. And the meaning would be, to string it in understandable English, ruined. I have sent the south wind to the flowers. So that might be ablative of location, or we could even say dative of reference in the negative, so against flowers, and bores against the liquid fountains. And I think the idea behind the proverb there would just be the flowers and the flowing fountain represent his plans. And he himself has caused their destruction by sending the south wind, which would tear the flowers apart. A lot of the flowers in his basket apparently are very susceptible to being blown to the bits. And then, of course, boars like muddying things up. So a beautiful, crystal clear fountain instantly ruined by a pig. And that is the state of things. I'm going to write down the translation now. So I should note I've gone with against, primarily because we've got the preposition on the verb. In can also mean against with negative intent. So there we have that. Let's take a look at it in its own context. You are rustic, Gordon. Neither does Alexis care for gifts, nor, if with gifts you fight, may Aeolus concede. Alas, alas, what have I wished for wretched me? Against flowers, south wind, ruined, and against flowing fountains I have sent boars. And so all comes crashing down. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful for you, and I hope that my brain crash hasn't been too much trouble. It happens all too often. Wale.